Hey Calgary, I'm Kevin Jorney. It's April 10th, and this is Calgary Now. Across the country and around the world, hospitals are grappling with the rising number of children and teens seeking mental health services. Here in Canada, provincial governments and the social agencies working on the front lines are dedicating the resources to address this growing trend. But at the moment, the services that are available are not enough to meet the demand. What ER doctors and psychiatrists are seeing is a rise in self-harm. Teens self-inflict wounds to cope with depression and stress in their lives. However, psychiatrists are challenged by the lack of indicators that would suggest a disorder to explain why there is an increase. Some are calling for a national strategy to address the issue, and while financial resources are needed to decrease wait times, it's clear more needs to be done to discover the root cause and put preventative measures in place. According to the Mental Health Commission of Canada, an estimated 1.2 million Canadian children and youth are affected by mental illness, yet less than 20% will receive the appropriate treatment, with more than 2/3 of adults living with a mental health problem reporting that symptoms first appeared during their youth. Establishing the foundation for healthy emotional and social development is vital to ensuring the mental well-being of all Canadians as they progress from childhood to adulthood. The mental health of our children should remain a priority for us. Yet, new challenges continue to arise, and it's not always a subject receiving the attention that it deserves. As such, my guests and I are sitting down here momentarily to discuss this very important topic. To get involved, please give us your input on Twitter at Calgary Now Show, and we'll be right back after this short break. Stay with us.
Unique to Canada, the endangered Atlantic whitefish is found only in one watershed, near Bridgewater in Nova Scotia. While we have much to learn about this fish, we know that acid rain, habitat changes, and the introduction of exotic fish species have all contributed to its decline. Fortunately, maintaining a clean water supply to Bridgewater also helps protect the habitat of the Atlantic whitefish and other wildlife. To learn more, visit hww.ca.
Hey Calgary, thanks for joining us tonight. We'd like to thank Dr. David Swan for returning onto the show. And also tonight we have Dr. Brian Zelt, Director of Outcomes and Clinical Development at Hull Services. Gentlemen, thank you very much for being here.
Glad to be here.
We'll start with you, Brian. Tell us briefly about your role with Hull Services.
My current role is to oversee some of the outcomes that we track in terms of our child and adolescent functioning, as well as the work that we do in a variety of programs and supports. Registered psychologists used to provide direct clinical support in a clinical capacity with a number of our programs at that time. So shifted a bit more to a management and outcome tracking role.
Excellent. Perfect. Good fit for the show. Thanks for being here again.
Perfect.
David, I want to congratulate you real quick. You voted in favor of motion 503, which was, I think, an excellent motion. It's too bad the results didn't turn out the way we'd hoped. I hope to talk a little bit about more of that tonight. But again, thanks for being here.
It was a defining issue for us, Kevin, and the Alberta Liberals, I would say Kent Hare particularly, initiated this, and it's clearly divided the population, especially the Conservative population, and showed that they're really not very tolerant, not very open to change, not very progressive in terms of honoring their commitment to young people and their freedom to choose the groups and identities that they need to.
Tough to argue. Proof's kind of in the pudding at this stage. Gentlemen, just to start things off here, each year it seems more and more children are diagnosed with having mental health issues. Are we simply getting better at pinpointing diagnoses, or are today's kids more susceptible than generations before them? I'll let you start off, Brian, if you would.
Sure. I think it's twofold. I do think as we progressed in our understanding of the etiology and underlying reasons why mental health issues emerge, particularly, and as mentioned in your spot, that a lot of these concerns start in childhood. I think we're doing a better job of identifying, diagnosing these types of issues and concerns. At the same time, I think there's a lot of societal pressures and challenges that both children and families are facing, and certainly mental health and the implications of that from those stressors, I think was where we see some of the underlying concerns. And so I think it's twofold for sure.
You would agree, David?
I'm not sure I agree. I think there's a lot of people still hiding, families that don't want to acknowledge a problem, teachers that don't recognize or don't know where to refer, I don't know the answer is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of illness out there, a lot of frustration, and access to services is still a problem. We have a government that's continuing to play catch up with something that has been growing and growing and growing, and still receives only 10% of the healthcare budget.
10%.
Children's mental health services.
In your eyes, that's a number that's far too low.
Absolutely. And it's showing itself because we're getting diagnosis later in life where there are complications, where there's serious threat to self-harm and harming others. We're seeing long wait times to see a psychiatrist, long wait times to get into a hospital bed if they really need it. We're short of a lot of the resources that are needed, and we're only spending 0.1%, 1/10 of 1% on prevention programs.
Yeah.
Kevin, you've talked about prevention in your introduction. 1/10 of 1% going into early intervention and prevention programs in this province. Not acceptable.
Is that a shameful number, Brian?
I think one of the challenges of working, in this field is that I think we're always looking for opportunities to expand the degree to which we are able to access some of the children and families that are highlighted. I think certainly if you talk about stigma or just a knowledge or awareness, I do think there's growing awareness. I think it's the challenges for many children and families is identifying what resources, what are the right resources to have those needs met. And so I think the more that we can educate the general public around mental health, which I think certainly is enhancing. But I think to me it's more of a how do we get the resources and supports to them at an earlier and earlier age. I think that's the ongoing challenge that we face.
Prevention seems to be the buzzword.
Well, 1/3 of children in Alberta today, the highest rate in Canada by the way, have one or more disabling mental conditions, whether it's learning or behavior or emotional problems. They are being identified in the early childhood mapping, and you can Google that and find out what the latest research on early childhood development and early childhood education is saying. Studies over 30 years ago showed us that if we don't invest in at-risk families and kids and moms, single parents, we're going to pay $7 more for every dollar we spend in prevention than we would pay if we invested in these kids and these high-risk families before school even, identified the problems, and worked with the family and the community and the individual to get them in and capable and successful in school and in the community.
Brian, I assume you've spoken to many children with your work with health services. Is there causes that are maybe being overlooked and need to be a bigger part of the conversation when it comes to children's mental health?
First of all, I think there's a wide variety of mental health conditions, so I think to lump them all together I think is a bit of a challenge. I think when we're talking about many times for young people, I think there's a recognition that there are things going on in their lives. I think maybe historically there's been some belief that mental health is something that sort of pops up out of the ground like a mushroom after a good rain, but the actual reality is that we see many of these things playing out in themselves. The child or the family may not have the formal understanding or appreciation of what those factors are, but certainly they are able to articulate the hurt, the suffering, the hopelessness, the things that they're experiencing, and their behaviors oftentimes are manifesting themselves that way. So that's a good job of being able to explain the hurt and the challenge. It's
half the battle.
That's initially the biggest part of things for sure. Yeah.
Is there a part of the conversation that is being missed in the public eye?
I think so. I think although the government has stepped up this year with a 3% increase in the budget for mental health and addictions services, I don't think we've begun to tackle some of the complexities around the social media that are affecting kids, some of the bullying that's going on either in cyber or
we'll get into that
in schools.
In just a moment,
I don't think we understand the whole role of pharmaceutical drugs and illicit drugs that are now more and more, and alcohol is a big one, obviously, always has been. So I think we have to do a lot more in terms of investing in research and early childhood development and identifying early and intervening early. We have a very disorganized system right now, and all the services that would be needed to help a family and engage in the complexities that a particular individual has in relation to their family and their community and their school need to be addressed. And they're not being addressed consistently and in a systematic way.
Folks, we're going to jump to a quick break. Stay with us. We'll be right back.